Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. Did you know that on December 6, 2023, the Florida State Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph A. Ladapo, sent a letter to the United States Food and Drug Administration, the FDA Commissioner, Dr. Robert M. Khalif, and Center for Disease Control and Prevention CDC Director, Dr. Mandy Cohen, regarding questions pertaining to the safety assessments and the discovery of billions of DNA fragments per dose of the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. The Surgeon General of Florida outlined concerns regarding nucleic acid contaminants in the approved Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. And he basically said the vaccine may be causing contaminated DNA to be carried into cells. So in 2007, the FDA published guidance on regulatory limits for DNA vaccines and the guidance for industry considerations for plasmid DNA vaccines for infectious disease indications guidance for industry. So basically, they published this in 2007 and said that if you create a vaccine that deals with DNA, there are limits on what that type of vaccine is not a good vaccine. And so they have limits on different things. And the FDA outlines important considerations for vaccines that use this type of delivery, this method of delivery regarding DNA integration. And they basically wrote this article against those type of vaccines because according to them, they said DNA integration could theoretically impact a human's oncogenes, the genes which can transform a healthy cell into a cancerous cell. They also said DNA integration may result in chromosomal instability, and the guidance for industry discusses biodistribution of DNA vaccines and how such integration could affect unintended parts of the body, including the blood, the heart, the brain, liver, kidney, bone marrow, ovaries, testes, lung, draining lymph nodes, spleen, and the site of administration and subcutaneous at injection site. So on December 14, 2023, the FDA provided a written response providing no evidence that DNA assessments have been conducted to address these risks that were outlined by the FDA themselves in 2017, and based on the FDA's recognition of unique risks posed by DNA integration. So the FDA provided no evidence that these risks have been assessed to ensure safety. And so as a result, Florida State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo released this following statement. And he said, the FDA's response does not provide data or evidence that the DNA integration assessments they recommended themselves have been performed. Instead, they pointed to genotoxicity studies, which are inadequate assessments for DNA integration risks. In addition, they obfuscated the difference between the SV40 promoter enhancer and SV40 proteins, two elements that are distinct. DNA integration poses a unique and elevated risk to human health and to the integrity of the human genome, including the risk that DNA integrated into sperm or egg gametes could be passed on to offspring of mRNA COVID-19 vaccine recipients. If the risks of DNA integration have not been assessed for mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, these vaccines are not appropriate for use in human beings. Providers concerned about patient health risks associated with COVID-19 should prioritize patient access to non mRNA COVID-19 vaccines and treatment. It is my hope that, in regard to COVID-19, the FDA will one day seriously consider its regulatory responsibility to protect human health, including the integrity of the human genome. In the spirit of transparency and scientific integrity, State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph A. Ladapo says he will continue to assess research surrounding these risks and provide updates to Floridians. Now, Ladapo issued the bulletin as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis um, his political patron, is trying to keep his head above the water in these Republican presidential primaries. So DeSantis trails former President Donald Trump by more than 40 percentage points in head-to-head polls. But anyway, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention data shows that Florida lags far behind most states when it comes to the percentage of its population that has received an updated booster dose. Now, I personally know of two people who have had the injection and boosters and still got COVID pretty bad. But anyway, grateful to live in a state where Big Pharma does not dictate health policy recommendations, Christina Pushaw, a DeSantis campaign official, posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, where she thanked Ladapo for standing up for scientific integrity. Now, the DeSantis campaign did not respond to questions about whether the governor coordinated with Ladapo on the announcement or whether he would adopt a similar position if he were elected president. But I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I don't trust any of these people enough to vote for any of them. However, I just thought I'd put this poll out there. 55% of Republican respondents vowed that they would definitely not get the vaccine, compared with 12% of Democrats, according to the November 2023 poll that was released by Health Policy Research at KFF. Now, here's a statistic I don't necessarily trust. They say that studies show, yet they haven't given the name of the study. But anyway, they say that studies show, and I got this from the Washington Post, Republicans are dying at higher rates than Democrats from the coronavirus after vaccines became widely available in April of 2021, since Republicans are apparently receiving the jab at a lower rate. I don't necessarily agree with those statistics. Sometimes some statistics are created to scare you into getting things. So, how do they know that Republicans are dying at a higher rate? Do they ask if you're a Democrat or a Republican when you're admitted to the hospital? If so, why should that even matter, especially if you're there for an emergency? Anyway, Trump has wanted to tout Operation Warp Speed, which was his 2020 initiative to successfully accelerate the development of the coronavirus vaccine. But now he doesn't really talk about the vaccine much in his 2024 presidential campaign. But remember when he mentioned using hydrochloroquine? Um, he mentioned using that as a cure for the coronavirus. Trump is not a doctor. He had to get that information from somewhere. And maybe there's some truth to it. I don't know. But anyway, back to Ladapo. He has increasingly amped up his warnings about the safety of the vaccine, often joined by his colleagues and media personalities. He appeared on the podcast of Del Bigtree, who led the anti-vaccine group Informed Consent Action Network. Ladapo also appeared in an online program hosted by Stu Peters, a media personality who has called for former presidential medical advisor Anthony S. Fauci to be hanged. But anyway, Rifki's was the former Florida Surgeon General, and he cited state data showing that more than 8,000 COVID deaths occurred in Florida last year. And he said the vast majority are likely to be vaccine preventable if people are up to date on their current vaccines. He also says if you're going to take mRNA vaccination off the table, and if you're not giving guidance to residents of Florida as to what to do to protect against COVID, this is something that is a major deviation from public health. So apparently he is in opposition to Ladapo. But personally, I have no desire to be poked. But billions of people around the world have received at least one. Before you put any of these injections into your body, always do your research and stay prayed up. Sometimes research can be as simple as listening to the stories of other people who have gone through the ordeal and letting them explain to you what they have gone through, both good and bad. Now, from what I gather, though, there's not much good at all. Anyway, if you've made it this far, you've come to the end. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you again soon. Don't forget to keep in touch, like, share, and subscribe.